hits the rocks and it's game over. Even though he was teasing David in disbelief, David still won. David didn't get scared and say, oh, you know what, he's got a point. All I got's a rock and a slingshot. No, he said, you know, you've defied the armies of God and you're going down. How many of you feel like telling the devil that some days? Why don't we? Okay, all right. Every time. Every time. All right. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about slaying the giant. And I talked to you about David and Goliath, but first of all, I want you to do a little bit of out-of-the-box thinking tonight. My shirt here says Nonconformist, given to me by the great Mike Pegg. And, you know, pretty much David had a choice. You know, he could have went to the same side as Goliath. And started, you know, now I know it's going against, you know, the Philistine and all. I got all that stuff. That's why I'm saying out-of-the-box thinking. But what I'm saying is he chose a side. And the side he chose was God's. But he could have very easily been over there on the other side taunting. How many times have we been in that situation? We knew what was right, but we stepped over here. So, in the words of Randy, I said all that to say, point one. So the first thing you've got to do is you've got to know that it exists. Okay? And it's an issue. It really is. And you know what? It won't always be noticeable to you, but others will see it. Well, what are you talking about? What is it? Your problem, your situation, what you're facing, your giant? That's exactly what I'm talking about. Try not to get too far and let people write here. The other thing is, and I call this kind of 1A, is the environment. You got to know the environment that it exists in. Think about it. You got bread, milk, meat, frozen versus in the sun. If you take meat and you put it in the freezer, you're okay, right? It's in date, you're good to go. Well, no matter what that date is, you go sit out there in the sun for a while in the middle of summer, and you're not going to be safe anymore with that meat. Because the environment changed, right? You know, food will spoil no matter how old. But why does it spoil? Because it's influenced. It's influenced by that environment. 1B. Does the environment need to change? Well, I would say if I'm coming out with spoiled meat, then my environment probably needs to change. And I'm trying not to gross anybody out, but you got to talk about this stuff, okay? You got parasites. We've got parasites. And parasites are not healthy for the spirit, just like they're not healthy for that meat. One thing that you've got with the environment is a location. You got a bar, you got TV, radio, websites, stations on the TV. Trust me, there's plenty of parasites out there for us to partake of today. Tons of them. You can be doing the most innocent thing you ever put your mind to on TV, or you can be watching a race or a football game or whatever, and you change the channel and there's that parasite. Just the first flick. I ain't talking about, you know, and then not only on top of that, you got commercials on the race that are bad. The whole Danica Patrick stuff now. I don't know how many follow races, but, you know, all this stuff, follow this online. Yeah, okay, you go do that. See where that leads you. That's a parasite. So, you know, you got different locations. And you know what? This stuff, it doesn't edify the spirit. You know it. You know when your spirit's being edified. You know when you're in the middle of something and you know that you don't need to be in that location. Whether it's a physical location, or it's an internet location, or a TV location, or even a radio location. You know, we got songs out there with you know, GD in them. That's not edifying your spirit when you hear that song. Number 2, or point 2 rather. Do not accept it as the norm. You know what? I'm sorry. I forgot one part. Back up. I meant to talk about something else with Talladega. How many of y'all heard on the radio, had the bad tornadoes in the area? I mean, they were hitting everywhere. You could see the damage. I think Mama watched the Weather Channel all day long, and that was kind of on repeat loop, I felt like. But, I mean, there were so many different issues that got, different places that got touched by this tornado. They were talking about trucks being picked up, and they were talking about all the damage and stuff. And I heard them talking about Talladega. And I love racing a lot. But they were sitting there and they were talking about all these people had no place to go that were out there because the race had been postponed to the next day. And I'm thinking, okay, I've been in the infield. That's not somewhere you want to be when a tornado is going to touch down. I don't care where you come from, And it was like, we're just going to kind of stick it out because we want to see the race. I'm going, these people are crazy, man. I'm going to tell you, I don't care where I drive. I could drive down to see the Sugar Bowl or somewhere and something come about like that. And I'm going to be like, no. Or people riding in the street. God gives you sense enough to get out of danger sometimes. And so I wanted to bring that up. But and it's the same thing, with with fear. I mean, there's got to be that fear of God in there. Okay? And that's what allows us not to accept it as the norm. I mean, you think about like my dad. My dad back in the day, and sometimes still today, he's probably gotten a little better with it, but he had a big anger issue. And because my dad had a big anger issue, I was okay. I was a pretty cool guy, but from time to time I had this threshold. And if I ever reached this threshold and I got angry above that, that was okay because I accepted that as the norm. Well, I had some talking with my HR director, and he said that wasn't okay. And he had a lot of complaints, and therefore that's where this lesson came from. So that's what I was telling you. I was going to be discussing that. But it's helped me. It really has. And I mean, I've got to send him an email of my progress. And y'all, we do. We take a lot of stuff as the norm, and we don't try to change it. We just accept it. God don't want you to accept. God wants you growing. God wants you to be able to be used. And if you got all this junk on you that you don't care to get rid of because you want to accept it as the norm all the time, He can't use you the way He wants. He can still use you, don't get me wrong, but you're not going to reach the potential that He wants you to be at. So do not accept it as the norm, okay? We've got to fear the sin. We've got to have that conviction there. We've got to fear it up front, not after. Not at the conviction point, but we've got to fear God up front. And I mean, I ain't trying to scare nobody, but He's responsible for everything. He's responsible for the nature out here. He's responsible. He could make a tornado come at any time, a flood, wash you away, stop your heartbeat. I mean, He's in control, y'all. I mean, I know we don't want to think about that, and we want to think about Him being this great, loving God. But in all reality, if He wants to do it, He can do it. And just because we got this great loving relationship with Him, we can't forget about the fear of the Lord. Because that's not healthy either. Fear has to be there. And like I said, me getting angry just because my dad got angry, that's no excuse. And you know what? That could be something that's been from generation to generation or generation. And you can stop it with you. The third thing, react to it positive. Well, to react to it positive, you've got to make an effort to change. But before you make an effort to change, you've got to accept the challenge. You've got to realize that the challenge was there. In my instance, I had to accept the challenge. It was